UFO whistleblower David Grusch has doubled down on some bombshell claims, maybe the most explosive being that the U.S. government has killed people who tried to go public with stories about non-human spacecraft, telling News Nation's Elizabeth Vargas last night. Let's watch.
You recently did an interview with Joe Rogan on his podcast, and you said something that really took me aback. You said that you believed that the United States government has killed people for trying to go public with a story. Really?
Those are concerns that certain scientists on the program that are known to me, presented that to myself, but I did direct them to the appropriate authorities on that. That's something that I don't know firsthand. That's something they espouse, but because of the serious nature of that, I directed them to the appropriate authorities, such as the Inspector General staff and law enforcement. So I can't speak to that because that's something that they espoused, and I directed them to the right authorities.
Other people were worried about that, not you.
I had some unique things happen in my personal life that, were some of the causal factors for me to file a complaint, some things that my wife and I had noticed, some intimidation. I can't get into the exact nature. I did provide that information to the Inspector General, and hopefully they've referred it to appropriate federal law enforcement and counterintelligence personnel, but I can't discuss that publicly because of the sensitive nature of that for my own protection and for the integrity of the investigation.
Yeah, because if you really believe that the government has done that in the past with people who've tried to expose this UFO program, why are you still alive? You've done more to expose it than anyone else.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I went public, and certainly I was shown that, they can touch me at any time, and that's what led me to not only contact my former agencies, counterintelligence folks with, what I witnessed, and I provided evidence to that fact, but filed the complaint, and certainly going public was the appropriate move for me for my own protection.
Tucker Carlson recently spoke with redacted co-host Clayton Morris, saying he hasn't even told his wife that what he's learned on this elusive subject. Let's watch.
The second thing that bothers me is the UFO story. And, the more you dig into that and talk to people with actual knowledge of it, again, that's another story where there are some, fanciful ideas floating around that are just, there's no evidence that they're true. But if you talk to people who, have actual knowledge of it that they gathered themselves, there are parts of that story that I do not understand at all that are really, really, really dark. It's so dark that I, haven't told my wife about it. I mean, I haven't verified any of this, but this is not just stuff that I read on the internet. I know you all are very, very grounded in that story, so I think I know what I'm talking about. Yeah. But there's some stuff there that's just like, man, I'm not even sure what that means. There's a spiritual component there that I don't fully understand. So yes, that story bothers me. And I think, last thing I'll say, that one of the reasons that we've had all these disclosures and all these, 10 whistleblowers at this point, and it hasn't really become front page news. Part of it's suppression. Parts of the government don't want you to know about it, but part of it is the public can't deal with it. It's too far out.
But some are critical of this particular exchange, saying Morris and Carlson never provide evidence, sources, or a reason for withholding that information. All right. So let's maybe go with the Grusch stuff.
Right. So Grusch is saying that he knows people who felt threatened for trying to come forward with information, or even that people were killed for doing so. And Elizabeth Vargas said, okay, but that's not necessarily based on your experience. And then Grusch said, well, obviously he hasn't been killed. He's alive. He's testifying. But he did he had fears for his for safety or for some kind of harassment based on what he's doing.
But based on what he's experienced, he said, they've shown me they can touch me. They've shown me that they know how to touch me in my life.
Well, he might be referencing the fact that there was a lot of negative reporting about him, actually, that The Intercept did. We talked to Ken Klippenstein about it. It was Ken's reporting on his history of I think it was substance abuse, that kind of thing. So he might mean that they tried to delegitimize me. They tried to smear my reputation for speaking up, which is not.
Do you think that's the same? I mean, that's not at all to minimize the kind of coercive power of doing something like that. And certainly the government has demonstrated...
The state has tremendous coercive power.
Yes, and the government has shown its willingness to do that in a million different ways, sending threatening letters to Martin Luther King, wiretapping him, all that sort of thing. So I credit that. at the same time, that wasn't exactly the question, right? What Vargas was pushing him on is this idea that his life has been threatened and that other people's lives have been threatened to the point of actually killing them.
Well, who's doing the threatening and who's doing the killing?
And where and who is it that has been apparently killed by the government? That's a very serious charge. I mean, we up until this point have been talking about a hunt for potential alien spacecraft and alien bodies. Should this be a manhunt for human beings that have been killed because of knowing too much about this
I want to know
program?
what agencies are responsible, and then we need to hold them accountable if it is the case, or we need to investigate them and find out it's BS.
And he says, you know, I pointed to them then to the proper authorities, but
the authorities are the ones doing this. You're saying so? What isn't the proper authority? Sunlight disinfectant. We need to know at some point. You're going to be. You're not saying they're already out from your perspective. Your claim they're already out to get you and your people for having this information. Isn't you need to get it out there?
Yes, and he says that about himself. Again, when Vargas asks him, well, what about your safety? He says, well, that's part of why I came forward. So there does seem to be a little bit of a gap.
If somebody's threatening you, you're not safe. Like you're not, as long as I satisfy them, you're already,
right.
Do you know what I mean?
So then
further
coming forward is
not
the safety. And he says that about himself. I came forward just there in that interview. I came forward in part because I felt threatened and I'm less exposed. And something happens to me now, it would seem suspicious. So why is that good for the goose but not good for the gander?
Yeah, that's a fair question.
Now, going on to the interview, the Tucker Carlson interview, there was a lot of insinuation, a lot of and raised eyebrows and deep swallows, gulps of trepidation. Is it misleading to have those kinds of interviews as a journalist?
Well,
without more. They both basically said in the clip that we watched, they personally have knowledge of more, much like Grusch. They personally know more. Is it that Tucker Carlson feels threatened? He says he said he characterized it as too out there to talk about. He didn't want to talk about it to his wife because it was too out there. What does that mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought perhaps maybe he was just referencing, the videos of unidentified aerial objects, or maybe he's seen some of them that the public's not seen, or that maybe people like his guest have shared with him. Obviously,
that are too much to discuss with your wife.
I don't know. Like he said, there's a spiritual.
He did a spiritual component.
I don't know.
I mean,
maybe he's seen something. Maybe he's seen something.
There are people who think that there's a conflict between the idea that there is a God in any kind of traditional sense and aliens. What does that do to theological practice if we are not God's only people? Do aliens have a different God? Is our God local? Is he really omniscient? These are the kinds of, I think, theological questions that aliens raise. And I don't know if that's what he's alluding to.
Well, that depends on what your religion is, maybe. I don't know that it's a conflict with... I don't think aliens necessarily conflict with the Catholic perspective, which was the religion in which I was raised. I don't think so, because they could just be... Other sentient life could have been created by God as well, or something like it. The Bible's just, for Catholics, the Bible is not the divine word of God. It's kind of like it's inspirational stories for lessons. It's not the Pope is the center of is the authority on religious truth.
And the debates around things like evolution and dinosaur bones, those aren't implicated in Catholicism the way they are in some other religions. No. Interesting. All right. Well, let us know what you think about this one. How are you reading that Tucker Carlson interview and some of the insinuations? And what do you think is really holding Grusch back? We want to know. And
do you support my plan to just figure out where the facility is, I'm going to do a January 6th on that facility that's hiding the alien crafts. We're gonna march. We're gonna take back our country with strength.
Okay, Robby.
Tomorrow on Rising, we'll have all the hottest takes on the most important news stories of the day.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while you're on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
See you later.
Bye-bye.